Delighted to say that we're joined in the studio today by Natasha Dowie, the former England, Everton and Liverpool striker, who, of course, as I'm sure you know, won the FA Cup with the Blues back in 2010 and is also Liverpool's all-time leading goal scorer in the Women's Super League, winning the league title twice with Liverpool. And it's good to see you. I know you've been here before, but good to see you back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
And I can't believe that it's now 2 years since you retired from playing football. I mean, where has that time gone?
Quite scary, isn't it? But it's been a great 2 years. I always feel a bit guilty saying that. People, when they say, do you miss the game? And obviously you miss it. You miss the teammates. You miss scoring goals. You miss the fans singing your name. But honestly, it's been probably one of the best 2 years of my life. You know, the first year was a bit of a roller coaster, you know, getting used to life not being Tash Dowie, the football player. Tash Dowie, the ambassador now, and I've loved it. And this year has definitely been a lot smoother after the pre-season tour with the men. You know, I've kind of found a bit of a pattern now, whether it's working within the foundation, coaching, a bit of mentoring. I'm doing a lot of commentary work as well for LFC TV and other channels. And honestly, I'm living the dream, and it's great to be able to have a real impact. You know, as a football player, it's quite a selfish role. You play, you live, you train, eat, sleep, repeat for 20 years. And now I love that I'm in a position where actually I can really make a change.
And I can tell that because you can make a change and because of your work with the LFC Foundation and also the media work that I know you really enjoy doing, I just sense that life is really good for you right now.
Yeah, it is. I've got a massive smile on my face, to be honest, and long may it continue. You know, I think I've kind of, I say I'm lucky. People say you've earned the right to be where you are, Tash, but to be honest, I feel very lucky. You know, going to Anfield every home game and working with the likes of, you know, your Phil Neals, you know, Sammy Lees, John Aldridges, all these absolute legends of the game. And, you know, I feel privileged and I will never, ever take it for granted, to be honest, you know, and I think that that's probably a good way to be about it. And, you know, things, yeah, there's so many exciting things that have happened to me, you know, the Legends game and, you know, going on the pre-season tour. I'm going to the Women's Euros this summer. So that's going to be my first major tournament as a commentator. You know, me and my partner Becky are very happy and, life is very good.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear it as well. And you have earned the right to do those things because I know when we were on the show last time talking, we spoke about your incredible career. And just for those who maybe aren't aware, you know, I mentioned before, you won the FA Cup with Everton back in 2010. You've won the league title with Liverpool a couple of times. You've also picked up the Women's Super League Golden Boot and the FA Players Player of the Year. You've played for England and also various clubs around the world. And as I say, you remain Liverpool's all-time leading goal scorer in the Women's Super League. I mean, that is a career that you should be really very proud of.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's lovely, especially now with the kind of role that I do. I do a bit of consultancy work where I go to academies and I talk to, you know, girls from 13 years of age all the way up to women's first team football. And it's called it's a resilience and identity talk that I talk about my career, the highs and lows within my 20-year career span, but I mainly focus on the lows because for me, the world that we live in on Instagram, you never post a bad photo. Everyone thinks you live this life where it's very smooth to the top and it's just not, you know, and I think that's really important that people understand that if you are going to have this career, there are going to be loads of highs and lows. But I think if you were to say to the Tash Dowie of, you know, 4 or 5 years old, that wasn't able to play football in primary school, that wasn't allowed to play football in secondary school, you know, it just wasn't a thing. To now then say to her that I've gone on and played in 6 different countries and, like you said, represented my country and done all those things, you know, I just wouldn't have believed you. But now that's what I love is that I go into these schools and I see these young girls that want to be football players and I say, you can do that. That's a possibility. That was never the case when I was younger. We never had role models on the TVs. You know, I always had male role models, whereas now, you know, women's football's on the TV all the time. Like I said, you've got the Women's Euros this summer, which is going to be huge. And to me, that just puts a massive smile on my face that these young girls have role models now that they can see.
And, you know, you've been on that journey, haven't you, as you say, from being in primary school and not being allowed to play football to adding something else to your CV this year, which, as you say, was the Liverpool Legends game. And you became the first woman ever to play for Liverpool in the Liverpool Legends against Chelsea. We should mention as well, Katie Chapman also became the first woman to represent Chelsea in that game as well. A sense of how far women's football has moved. But how big a moment was that for you?
Oh, huge. Yeah, I keep reliving it in my head, to be honest, from the training session the night before on the Friday night at AXA, where I met all the lads, and I knew a few of them through doing appearances at the club. but the intensity was so high. I'm glad I had that training session because, obviously physically men are built different than women. The tempo's a little bit quicker and they're physically stronger. So I knew I had to be on my A game, even though I've only retired a couple of years ago. I knew the quality would still be high. And I was a little bit nervous, on the game day. It's been 2 years since I'd, played in a match. I'd never in my life played in front of a crowd this big. Probably the most I'd played in front of was 25,000 in the FA Cup final in 2010. So to be stepping out onto Anfield in front of 58,000 with the likes of Steven Gerrard. And, more so because I wanted, one, to do myself proud, but I wanted to do, all the young girls, all the females watching. I didn't want to be that token gesture. I didn't want it to be, well, this is why women shouldn't play with men. I really wanted to kind of, almost have a positive impact on the game. And to be fair, I've been getting quite a lot of stick and good humour about smashing Makelele within the first 30 seconds of coming on the pitch, which seemed to go down really well. And then I think I went after Dennis Wise as well and had a bit of a rough and tumble with him. And to be honest, I've been remembered in my career for scoring goals, but now I think people think I'm some like tough tackler. So that's a change. But no, honestly, the feedback I got after Steven Gerrard messaged me saying it was an absolute privilege to play with you. Well done. The amount of videos I had of mums lifting up their young girls and saying, look, this is what you can do one day. And that's what it's all about. I really want to inspire that next generation. And for me, this should be the norm now. It's a charity game. It's a legends game. Men and women should be able to play. It's like I said, it's for the foundation. We raised over £1 million and honestly, it was incredible.
And as you say, it is about inspiring the next generation. And I saw so many comments on social media when you and Katie played from young girls who were there with their dads on the day and saying, look, this means I can play in the Legends game in years to come, possibly. And it is about inspiring that generation, which is really important, of course. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, but you did make all the headlines, didn't you, for that? Should we say it was a coming together with Claude Makelele? And I think there was there a sense that maybe you were going to get sent off for that, do you think?
Do you know what? I actually met the referee a couple of weeks ago and I said to him, look, if that had been a proper game, what would you have given me? And he said, no, it was definitely a yellow. Wasn't a red, but he would have definitely given me a yellow card. So I said, thanks for letting me off. But everyone said it got the crowd going and it kind of, lifted the kind of tempo of the game a little bit. So I'm glad that I had that impact.
And as we said, you have earned your right to be in that game. But there is one question I would love to ask you today. When you looked at that list of Liverpool legends and indeed Chelsea legends, when you looked at the team sheet, was there one player where you had that pinch me moment, that sudden realisation that you were going to be on a pitch alongside one of the legends, one of the great names of the game from years gone by? Who was that player?
I think that's quite easy, isn't it? Let's be honest. Stevie G. Yeah, absolutely. He didn't train on the Friday, so he turned up to the hotel on the Saturday morning. And straight away when I walked into the room and saw him, I don't really get starstruck, for me. And I think that's a positive thing. They're just human beings in my eyes. And obviously I respect what he's done in the game. And as soon as I walked in, he said to the lads, well, at least we've got a decent striker, for once. So that was a nice comment. And actually when we were walking out to the pitch together for the warm up, he said, have you ever played in front of a crowd this big? And I said, no. And he said, look, don't worry. If you make a mistake, I'll be there backing you up. Just enjoy yourself and express yourself. So I think that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of love for Stevie G, clearly. So a great occasion for you. Great that you could be part of that. And, we talk about you retiring from the game now 2 years ago, becoming Liverpool's first female ambassador as a result. One particular person who I know helped to give you that opportunity as well was Susan Black, Liverpool's Director of Communications, who this summer steps down from the role after 14 successful years. I mean, I'm sure, Natasha, you're very grateful to Susan for everything that she has achieved, not just for you, but also for Liverpool Football Club as well. Oh,
she's incredible. Susan's someone that hates being in the limelight. She absolutely hates it. She had a nice little kind of send-off as well at the gala event last week with Jurgen there, and she hated that moment as well. And I think that says a lot about her as a human being, is that she always puts everyone else in front of herself. And I say it, I wouldn't have had this role if it wasn't for the likes of her and Alex Inglethorpe, where they had that discussion and created this role for me. And I say it now, Susan Black is a role model for me. You know, she's someone that has inspired me. You know, she's been in positions where you have to be tough to be a female, to be, you know, on the exec board at Liverpool Football Club. And she deserves this break. You know, she's worked so hard. So I said to her, you know, enjoy your time off with your husband, Paul, and she absolutely deserves this. And hopefully we'll keep in touch, because I see her as a friend now, as well as, you know, kind of a role model for me.
Natasha Dowie is with us. And Natasha, let's just reflect on what we've seen in the last 9 months for Everton and Liverpool in the Women's Super League. A seventh placed finish for Liverpool this season. It was a somewhat difficult campaign for the Reds, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, to be honest. I think that injuries really hurt them to key players in key moments throughout the season. You know, they were probably without, you know, their number 9, Sophie Hogg, for a good chunk to 2 to 3 months. And then if she was injured, then potentially there were times where Olivia Smith, the new signing, who had a great first season in the WSL and has already, you know, got interest from the likes of Chelsea and Lyon and some top clubs. So, yeah, absolutely. I think with regards to how they did last year, finishing 4th to finishing 7th is obviously disappointing. But I think also with the way the women's game is moving forward, every year it gets tougher and tougher. You know, you look at what Chelsea are doing, 6 years in a row now. And for me now, it's a case of, you know, asking players and asking teams to challenge Chelsea. You know, I don't think anyone wants to see the same team winning it back to back, but credit to Chelsea and what they're doing. They're investing in the right way. You know, they're wanting to win everything. You know, I think for them, this was a disappointing season, even winning the treble, you know, because they wanted all 4. But no, as a Liverpool fan, I want to see the women's team winning trophies again. And on their day, they're absolutely good enough to beat the top teams. But I just think it's probably consistency now moving forward, which they'll be looking to do.
And this is it, because when you talk about Chelsea, they are by far and away the best side in Europe right now. As you say, 6 successive Women's Super League titles. And I guess for Liverpool, yes, it's clearly an aim to compete with Chelsea, but surely at the minute, just competing with the likes of Arsenal and the Manchester sides as well is also something to aim for.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I think when they finished 4th last year, everyone was thinking potentially they were the team to break into that top 3. And sadly, that wasn't the case this year. But I think that's the great thing about the WSL, and why, in my opinion, it is the best you know, league in the world, is that because the bottom team can beat the top, and that's happened this season. You know, so when you talk about Chelsea, yes, they are the most consistent for sure. I've probably got the bigger squad to allow them to rotate and compete in every tournament. But then, yes, when you look at Arsenal, United, I think have had a very good season this year. City, injuries wise, you know, I've never known a season like it, to be honest, with regards to, you know, how many injuries they had. So they've obviously missed out now on that top 3 in Champions League spot. What does that do for them this summer is going to be interesting. And then, you know, you look at the likes of everyone else then is in and around it. You know, Aston Villa at one point were in the relegation battle and actually then finished, I think, above Liverpool with regards to the run that they went on at the end. So Everton, you know, moving to Goodison next season and potentially going to have good investment there. So I think, you know, year on year, you know, you have to invest. And I've come from an era where money wasn't there in the women's game. You know, you kind of never really played for money. It was more the love of the game. Whereas now, you know, that is the case in women's football. And good or bad, I guess that's the way it's moving forward. And I just hope and pray that the women's game keeps that humility, you know, and that's what I want, you know, the connection with the fans, to remember, you know, where the women's game has come from and absolutely enjoy the journey, but don't lose that pureness that the women's game has got.
And of course, for Liverpool, it was also the season in which we saw the departure of Matt Beard. And of course, we know that football is a results-based business. Of course it is. But it was a disappointing end, wasn't it, really, for Matt Beard, when you consider everything that he's done for the club over recent years? Yeah,
do you know what? I can't speak highly enough about Matt Beard. You know, he's someone that I played with at 17 years of age at Charlton when he was an assistant coach under Keith Bonas. I then moved to Liverpool to work with him, and we had 3 incredible years together, winning the league back-to-back. I followed him over to America to play with him at Boston Breakers, and we had 2 amazing years there together. And then, you know, I'm very thankful for him because, you know, he brought me back to Liverpool on loan from Reading, and, you know, he allowed me to come back to the club that I loved. And I really am thankful for that, because then, you know, maybe I wouldn't have had this ambassador role if it wasn't for him. And, you know, I see Matt Beard as a friend. You know, absolutely he will find another job within the game. You know, that's clear in my opinion. I think, you know, what he's done, he's, you know, been around it from the start. And maybe he just needed a bit of time to kind of clear his head and, you know, get his thoughts on what he wants to do next as well, because it's tough. You know, he's got family, he's got kids that he's got to support, a wife. And I think probably that's why I've kind of never gone down that management role, because it just seems too stressful for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you can stick to the media work and what you do, you know, there is less stress there. And as we know, Amber Whiteley has been appointed as interim manager for the time being. I would suspect, Natasha, that we'll get news of a permanent replacement for Matt Beard sometime this summer.
Yeah, I think so. I think Amber's, stated in the kind of press conferences that she wants a job. She wants the opportunity to be the head coach role, and good on her for, putting that out there and stating that case. I think she's been at the club now for maybe 5 years as an assistant coach, so she wants to be able to be that kind of first team coach. And, I think the club moving forward will obviously do their homework, do their research. They've obviously seen Amber firsthand, what she can do, within this kind of 3 to 4 month period. They obviously know of her as well, have dealt with her for the last 5 years. But I think whoever it is that moves this team forward, the club would have done their homework, and they will feel like it's the right person to move this club up to where we want it to be, which is going to be fighting for trophies. This is Liverpool Football Club, men or women's team. You want to be winning trophies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, despite the disappointing 7th placed finish, it's not all doom and gloom for Liverpool this season. There are positives, and we'll talk about Olivia Smith in a minute or two. But I guess for Liverpool for next season, it's about building upon some of the more impressive performances that we've seen from Liverpool this season. We know what they can do, such as, for example, that win over Manchester United at Anfield.
Oh, it's great. I was there. Yeah, the first win at Anfield as well, which was a huge moment. And to be honest, Liverpool dominated the game right from the off. I think it was a top performance. 2 goals by Smith and Fuka Nagasato, who got, I think, her first goal as well of the season. Top player as well. And, there was a DJ before the game. The whole environment and the whole day was great. And it was probably one of my games of the season, to be honest, with regards to real quality. And I think you're spot on. They were seconds away from reaching the FA Cup final. Heartbreak, last minute goal. I think it was Beaver Jones who scored against them away. So for me, moving forward next season, I've said it, Liverpool at the moment are not going to win the league. I think the gap is too big, but to get a trophy, to get a good cup run, I think that's what they should be targeting over the next couple of years.
So that is your minimum expectation, I guess, for Liverpool for next season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they can do that. I think cup games are different to league games. We talk about that consistency. Liverpool absolutely on their day can beat a Chelsea, can beat a United. They've shown it over the last couple of seasons, Arsenal's. So that's for me, that is absolutely a given. I think we were so close this year. So let's make a final next year and bring some silverware back.
And let's talk about Olivia Smith, shall we? Because an outstanding season for the youngster. She's 20 years of age, her debut season for Liverpool, and she ends up as the club's top goal scorer for the campaign. I mean, it's just been brilliant to see, hasn't it?
Do you know what? It's been really, really enjoyable watching her progress. To come to this league and to perform the way that she has is not easy. And you forget how young she is sometimes with the kind of maturity that she plays at. And for me, she's just exciting. When we talk about it, I never had pace, but she has some pace. But it's not just pace. I've known players that have pace but don't know how to use it. She absolutely knows how to use it. And, when we talk about, winning games for the team, she's been in those positions where she's won games for Liverpool with her performances. Her pace has been a massive outlet, her directness, her skill. There's been times where she's made some top left backs look very average, scored goals, from positions where she should never have scored goals. So for me now, Liverpool have to hang on to her. Absolutely, they do. And then look to kind of build the team and continue to build the team, and bring in more quality, like Olivia Smith. And I think if that's the case, then absolutely we can climb in the right direction. And I hope that Olivia Smith sees Liverpool Football Club as a club that can be competing for trophies, and that we don't lose her.
Yeah, she is like a breath of fresh air, isn't she? And understandably, she also won the Players' Player of the Year award, and also, I think, the Young Player of the Year award as well. So many congratulations to Olivia, and we'll see what she can achieve next season, of course. So we're looking ahead to what Olivia Smith and the rest of the players can do next season. But we should also mention as well and pay tribute, Natasha, to Niamh Fahey, Liverpool's captain, of course, who recently announced her retirement from football at the end of this season. I mean, she's going to be hugely missed, isn't she?
Niamh is just a great character. I can't speak highly enough of her because she's come from my generation. I remember playing against Niamh when I was at the likes of Everton and Charlton, and she was a tough centre-half playing for the likes of your Chelseas and Arsenals, and she was just an honest player, would give 100% every single game, every single training session, has won everything in the game. And I think when you look at what players have been saying. You know, for me, when you step away from the game, yes, you want to have won things, and Niamh has done that. But I think more than anything, you want to be remembered as being a good teammate. And I think when you look at that, you know, everyone says about how she's a real leader, how she's been a role model for them. And Niamh, you know, has probably had a tough couple of years, to be honest, the last couple of years. Hasn't played a lot of minutes this year, struggled with injuries the year before. Probably not the way that she would have liked to have finished her career with regards to playing time, but not once has she ever moaned, has she ever complained. You know, she is just the ultimate professional and a team player. And no matter what her role is, whether it's on the bench, whether it's in the stands, whether it's, you know, player coach role that she had this year, she's there for the team. And I hope, you know, she stays within the city and within the club and within the game, because I think she'll be a massive loss if not. But she's a bright girl as well. So I'm sure whatever she does moving forward, she'll be a success.
And of course, we know that she helped Liverpool 3 seasons ago win the championship title, and that re-established Liverpool back into the top flight. I think she wore the captain's armband some 70 times as well. And you know what she talks about, doesn't she? She talks about how fortunate she is in that she has achieved so much in her career. And I guess you can empathise, can't you, with what she's going through right now?
Oh, I absolutely can. And I think the great thing I would like to say for Niamh is that it's her decision. And I think sometimes, you know, football and sport can be quite cruel. Like, your career can be ended with an injury, or, you know, your career can be ended at a club maybe that you don't love. Whereas Niamh has always been a Red, you know, so to be able to retire at the club you love, which I was able to do, it's her decision to step away from the game. You know, I think Niamh was fit enough, you know, to carry on playing if she wanted to, and I'm sure she would have had options. But I think she probably knows the time's right, and I feel like this is something maybe over the last couple of years that she's been thinking about. So I'm happy that she's been able to step away from the game at the right time, and like I said, winning everything. So that's not a bad career to have, is it? No regrets.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about Everton in the next few minutes as well. Natasha Dowie is with me talking all things football. Let's talk about Everton's women, shall we? An 8th placed finish for the Blues this season, not where they wanted to be, but it's another campaign in which Everton's women have been really hampered by a significant number of injuries.
Yeah, absolutely that. I think the last couple of years that's been the case. And Brian Sorensen has said on numerous occasions he just hasn't been in a position where he's been able to pick his strongest 11. I think it's really exciting times moving forward for Everton. I was actually on a podcast a couple of weeks ago with Megan Finnegan, the captain, who has sadly done her ACL and has been one of Everton's key players. And she said that probably it's the first time in her career since coming through the academy where, when I was playing for Everton and where we were probably one of the best teams in the league, just second after Arsenal winning the FA Cup final, that she felt like the club were actually really seriously investing now in the women's team. And she's actually spoke to the new owners. They've kind of spoke about, you know, what the future looks like, and she's seriously excited about it. And I think keeping Goodison as the ground for the women's team, that in itself is a huge statement.
It is indeed. And, you know, it's huge, not just for Everton, but for the women's game in general, as you say. And I think we were just saying off air, what's going to be really important next season is how Everton manage the match day experience at Goodison. Because, again, with the greatest respect, you're not going to get 30,000 spectators watching Everton's women. The seating layout is going to be different. But we should also recognise that the ground is going to be the biggest designated women's football stadium in the country.
It's brilliant. It really is. It puts a smile on my face. You know, I had 5 amazing years at Everton, so I want both clubs to do well, if I'm being completely honest. And my biggest dream and wish is to start seeing our derby games, you know, selling out at Goodison and at Anfield. You know, when you look at what Arsenal are doing, you know, they really are paving the way with regards to selling out the Emirates 60,000. And, you know, for me, the question is, well, why? Why shouldn't we? You know, football in this city is the biggest sport. It's huge. So why shouldn't the women's derbies been getting sold out? And I would love that. And I think, you know, for me, Everton moving to Goodison is absolutely a huge thing. And actually it puts then not pressure, but potentially pressure on other clubs to actually start following in their footsteps, because that's what we all want to see. We want to see every women's team playing in these big stadiums with sellout crowds. And I think probably moving forward, I think when I spoke to Megan as well on the podcast, she said that was probably one of the first things she said to the new owners is actually they were a bit worried about moving to Goodison, because actually One, you don't want to play in an empty stadium when it's a huge stadium. Two, how do you make this feel like our new home, because it's been the men's home for so long? And look, everyone wants to play on nice pitches, but there's more to it than just the football pitch. You know, you have to feel like this is your fortress, you know, and people don't like coming there. And, you know, that's what I think Everton have done over the last couple of seasons. You look at Liverpool with playing at Tranmere. Now they're trying to make St Helens their new fortress. So I'm excited about how they go about that. But I think for both clubs, Liverpool and Everton, that should be their main focus now, is bums on seats.
And clearly it's going to be important, isn't it, for Everton to attract those spectators who possibly would never have gone to Walton Hall Park, but who now would actually quite like to watch a game at Goodison.
And I think that's a massive positive, if I'm being completely honest, is the location. You know, we talk about it, whether a game's on TV or, you know, whether, you know, it's easier for people just to stay at home, or potentially if the stadium's outside of the city, you know, can people really be bothered to get in a car and make that way? But you have no excuses now. You know, Goodison is in the heart of the city. You know, Anfield is in the heart of the city. So when these games and these derbies are being played at these stadiums, for me, I'd absolutely say, you know, go and experience it. You know, women's football is different to the men's, and I don't even like comparing it because it's just two completely different sports with regards to, you know, the kind of entertainment factor. But I've been there as a fan now, and there's so many fun things, and it's a family day out. You know, home and away crowds can sit together. It has a real nice feel about it. So for me, you know, I'm really excited about, you know, that first derby at Goodison Park.
And when you talk about it being a family experience, again, similar to what we said before about playing for the Legends game, you know, there were daughters going to Goodison with their dad, and the dad saying to the daughter, you know, Goodison Park, it's not going to close. It's still going to be here. The women are going to be playing at Goodison. And the daughter's 4, 5, 6, 7 years of age saying, does that mean then, Dad, that maybe I could play here at Goodison in one day? And again, it's that inspirational part of it, isn't it?
It is. And I think we talk about it. I think the Lionesses winning the Euros was a huge turning point within women's football in England. And I think potentially that's why your Arsenals, your Chelseas, your Cities, Uniteds at the moment, you know, probably have a bigger following, if I'm being completely honest, because they have Lionesses within their squads. But I think moving forward now, if Everton are going to invest in the right way, and for me, that statement of moving to Goodison, that will allow them to attract better players, you know, potentially Lionesses. And I think that will then actually get you more bums on seats and more crowds, because, you know, I think then also winning games helps, if I'm being completely honest. And that's what I want to see from both sides. Obviously, yes, I'm a Red, I'm a Liverpool fan. I want Liverpool to win. But if Liverpool and Everton are successful and start winning games and start getting higher at the table and start playing in cup finals, then more people will come. And I think that's kind of the good and bad of the game. You have to start winning and attracting fans. And why do fans want to come and watch you play? Because yes, you play attractive football. Yes, you have players that attract fans, you know, entertaining and exciting players.
And of course, one of the biggest advertisements for the women's game is just 5 weeks away at the start of the Women's Euros in Switzerland at the beginning of July. We know the Lionesses, of course, will be looking to defend their title from 3 years ago. How do you assess the chances for England this time around?
Strong. Yeah, very strong.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about it, you're talking about England and Spain. Absolutely, there will be other countries involved. Your Swedens, your Germanys, your France, you know, your kind of normal top 5 to 6 countries. But really, Spain and England are the two that I think are heavy favourites, and are two that have been going head to head for the last couple of years with regards to, you know, England winning the Euros, Spain winning the World Cup, England heartbreaking the World Cup final. I watched them last night against Portugal, and Portugal are a top team, and they absolutely wiped the floor of them 6-0. And that's with still some of their top players, your Russos, your Toons, your Lauren James, your Millie Brights, you know, just to name a few that weren't involved. Russos, I think I named her, but some key players, you know, Lauren Hemp has only just come back and she looked absolutely frighteningly in good form. You know, someone that's been out for 5 months, but to have her back. Chloe Kelly's happy again now playing at Arsenal. She's finding her form. Beaver Jones coming in and scoring a hat-trick, you know, so that gives Serena Wiegman a headache with regards to who does she play in that number 9 role now. So I think it's all coming together quite nicely for England.
And I think the Lionesses really finding their form at exactly the right time, as you say, with that 6-0 demolition last night. Yeah,
and I think, you know, they've got Spain next on Tuesday, I think it is. So I think, again, we talk about it. I think that will say a lot. I think, yes, will both teams play their cards? I'm not sure. Will they still want to experiment? I think they will. But they'll absolutely want to win this game. You want to build momentum leading into the Euros, and I'm excited to be there and watch it live.
And it's going to be, a tough campaign for England, very much in the group of death for the Euros, alongside France and also the Netherlands. Two teams who are both capable of also winning the tournament themselves.
Yeah, that is one hell of a group, isn't it? Yeah, I've been following Wales quite closely as well, because my partner's a scout for the Wales women's national team, and to qualify for their first major tournament and then get in that group with the Netherlands, France and England is a real tough one. But that kind of really blows the tournament wide open as well, with regards to, one of the top nations will, go out. And do you know what? I'm not saying that Wales can't be in the mix there as well. On their day, I'm sure they could cause an upset, and they'll absolutely be wanting to go into that tournament causing an upset. But I think whoever progresses out of that group, you'd really then fancy them to go on and win it.
And you do sense if England get that roll and they get that momentum, you'll get the nation behind them, which is what we saw 3 years ago.
Yeah, we did. And I think a lot of people will be coming out to Switzerland. I mean, it's a beautiful place. I've been looking forward to seeing big crowds over there. Like I said, I'm excited to be out there for the whole month. So I'm going to really be soaking up that atmosphere as well. But I think they'll want to start strong, get off to a good start. And like you said, I think keep everyone fit. There's been a couple of players that have been struggling with injuries. It's been long seasons for some players as well, obviously with the Champions League final for the Arsenal players, Chelsea pretty much being involved in every tournament. Millie Bright has openly come out and said she needs a little bit of extra time, mentally and physically to kind of then hit the ground running. And I think it's brave of players to do that as well, because, there's a big demand now within the women's game. We never used to play this many games back when I was playing. So, you don't want to see any kind of injuries leading into that tournament. And I think Serena Wiegman, Mary Earps as well, stepping away from the squad. That's a huge loss as well, with regards to if anything happens to Hannah Hampton. So, yeah, it's all going on.
And how shocked were you to hear the news about Mary Earps?
Very, if I'm being honest. Yes and no. It's hard, isn't it, as a player? I think she would have obviously been involved in the squad, but I also know what it feels like to potentially know that you're not going to be number one. And, I had that mentality as a striker, whether it was wrong or right. I always wanted to play. I was a bit like a Mo Salah, when he gets taken off with 5 minutes to go, he's not happy. And I think that was Mary Earps' mentality, if I'm being completely honest. She wanted to be England's number one. And you never know what the reasons are behind why she wanted to step away. Was it because she would have struggled with not being number one? Was it because, as she said, maybe it's the younger generation now, it's their time? I would have loved to have seen her go, because she's such a big personality, and I think what she could offer, even if she didn't play, would be invaluable. But you've got to respect her decision, and what a career she's had with England. She's obviously won the Euros, done so many things off the pitch as well for the women's game, and I'm sure this obviously won't be the last you'll see or hear of Mary Earps for sure.
And of course, we wish her good luck for the future as well, and whatever she decides to do. It's going to be a big summer for Hannah Hampton in goal, as you say, and we wish her good luck for the Euros, which gets underway in 5 weeks' time. Just before we finish, Natasha, last time you were here, it was just over a year ago, and I think it was about a week after Jurgen Klopp had announced his shock resignation as Liverpool manager. I just want to get your thoughts on what we've seen from the men this season, and I don't think anybody could have imagined the season that we have just seen under Arne Slot. It really has just exceeded all expectations, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. It really has. I was lucky enough to go on the pre-season tour in the summer and to kind of witness firsthand what Arne Slot was about, and the kind of impact that he had straight away on the players and the respect that he had from the players. But still, to kind of have the season that he's had, I think it says a lot for the kind of squad that Jurgen had left him, but that still in itself doesn't make it easy to go on and do what he's done. And he's a completely different character to Jurgen, and I think good or bad, it's worked. Absolutely it has. And it has. It's just been a great year, to see players like Sir Gravenberch come out of his own and to come into a kind of new role and really thrive. The Mo Salahs, and continues to do what he does. I think it's been really positive with regards to the end of the season to have Verge and Mo's contracts extended, and obviously Frimpong announced, Trent moving on. I wish him the best of luck, and that was a tough period. But, I think behind the scenes, Liverpool mean business next season, put it that way. And it's not going to be easy to go back to back, but I do think that to make that early signing, and obviously the rumours from what I've heard, if they can get those players, I really do think potentially it's going to be another successful year.
I think it was a huge statement, wasn't it, to sign Frimpong when they did as early on in the season, to say, look, we are going to mean business this summer, because You know, for Liverpool to compete with the likes of Manchester City, they don't just want to win the title once, they want to win it again and again and again. So I think it's going to be a really important summer in terms of transfer activity for Liverpool. But, you know, you mentioned the likes of Van Dijk and Mo Salah, cornerstone of the squad. They will be there again next season. And what we're seeing from Mo Salah, I mean, the guy is a beast, isn't he? Because I think this was his second most effective campaign that's just finished since he arrived at Anfield in 2017. He's showing no signs of slowing down.
He's phenomenal. I can't speak highly enough about him. You know, I was a striker that loved to score goals, but his stats are just out of this world, and what he's added to his game with regards to assists as well. You know, top goal scorer, top assists. You know, the physique and, you know, the kind of training that he does. You know, his obsession to be the best is what I love. You know, and one of the older players in the squad now, but still one of the fittest, still has, you know, the best kind of physical physique, plays 90 minutes every single game, every single week, never has an injury, cross fingers, touch wood, that continues. That's not easy. You know, and the standards that he sets every year, he's having to beat his own records now, you know, and that doesn't get easier, but he loves that pressure. He thrives off that pressure. And I'm just glad that he stayed with Liverpool. And I think he'll continue to progress in the way that he's progressing. It's great.